Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guests today are Fumi Tamaki, the Chief Taxpayer Experience Officer at the Internal Revenue Service, and Bridget Roberts, the Direct File Chief at the IRS. Thanks for being here. Let's start by talking about something that has been a reoccurring theme for the series throughout the year about high impact service providers. Every agency has had a different perspective on what that means to be a HISP. And Fumi, let me ask you, from your perspective, what does it mean for the IRS to be a HISP, and how does it set a high standard for the agency to deliver to the nation's taxpayers?
So to be a high impact service provider it's a great responsibility. And I think we definitely provide a huge impactful service to all Americans. In fact, it's kind of meta that we are also a high impact service provider to other high impact service providers as well, right? Because the tax dollars that we collect will fund other mission critical things that the other high impact service providers and other government entities do. So it's a very exciting time to be at the IRS because the focus on service is just tremendous right now, especially with the Inflation Reduction Act and the funding that we received from it. It is enabling us to accelerate a lot of the things that the Internal Revenue Service has wanted to do for a very long time. And I know that Bridget will talk a little bit more about some of the really innovative and exciting things that are going on at the IRS from a service perspective as well.
Right. And Bridget, just picking up right there, the IRS has been very busy with the direct file from the pilot stage to present day. We're looking at 24 states that will be enrolled in direct file for the 25 filing season. That's up from 12 previously. So just tell me a little bit more about the direct file project, how it's gotten to this point, and what the future holds for direct file.
Sure. So direct file started because of a provision coming out of the Inflation Reduction Act, which asked the IRS to write a report to Congress talking about what it would take for the IRS to deliver a service that looked like direct file, allowing taxpayers to file their returns electronically online for free with the IRS. And as part of that report to Congress, we built a prototype of what direct file could look like and put it in front of real taxpayers because we thought the best way to sort of gauge how taxpayers might respond to something like this was to actually let them see a real tool, play with it, and get a feel for it so they could give us real feedback. And from the report to Congress, Treasury asked us to deliver a pilot last year, which we did. It was a relatively limited pilot in terms of the number of states that could participate and the tax scope that we delivered for that first year. But it was really exciting to be able to bring this to taxpayers and to be able to show that the IRS can do really innovative things like direct file. We talk about direct file as something that we built with taxpayers, not for taxpayers. So from the very beginning, from that prototype, we were putting parts of direct file in front of taxpayers before it even launched to get their feedback and to make changes to the product so that when we finally did launch, it was as user-friendly as it could be. And I think we saw that in how taxpayers responded to the pilot. We had over 140,000 returns accepted through direct file during the pilot. Even more taxpayers, millions went to direct file to see if they were eligible. And the feedback that we got from users during the pilot, was really overwhelmingly positive. 90% of taxpayers really loved their experience with direct file. They liked their experience with customer support when they needed to get help from customer support. And I think, my favorite data point is that 87% of taxpayers who used direct file during the pilot said that it actually increased their trust in the IRS, which I think is huge for a new product like this that no one had ever seen before. So we're really excited now that direct file is a permanent option for taxpayers to be able to bring it to, as you said, 24 states. 30 million taxpayers will be eligible as we expand, the tax scope and the states that we're serving this year. It'll be available when filing season starts. So we're really excited to be able to bring this option to more taxpayers for the upcoming filing season.
Yeah, and as I've heard Commissioner Werfel say, you can't beat the price. It's completely free, and that's another thing that taxpayers really appreciate about direct file. Fumi, you were talking about the Inflation Reduction Act and how that has been a real game changer for what the IRS can do as far as taxpayer experience, doing things like direct file, but really has opened the aperture for what's possible and what the IRS is in fact doing. Can you tell me a little bit more about what the IRS has been up to as far as this portfolio of taxpayer experience and perhaps what's on the horizon. What are you guys most keyed in on?
Sure. There's a lot that we're working on right now. And in fact, if you want to see, dive into the details of the plan, we actually have several things that you can read online. We have a document called the Strategic Operating Plan, the IRS Strategic Operating Plan, and in there we outline, exactly the sorts of taxpayer improvement opportunities that we're laser focused on. The vision that we have for what the taxpayer's experience could be with the IRS in the future, that the Commissioner Werfel has, of course, mentioned, uh, you know, publicly as well, is that all taxpayers can meet all of their responsibilities, including all interactions with the IRS, in a completely digital manner if they choose. So we're very excited about this, digital first focus of our transformation journey. And then just a little bit more specifically in terms of where we're focused. So the first area of focus is to really dramatically improve the service that we provide to taxpayers to help them meet their tax obligations and also receive the tax incentives that they're eligible for. Another area of focus is, if you do have an issue that, inevitably might arise after you submit your tax return, then you can quickly resolve it. We want this experience. We, even as IRS employees, our heart skips a beat when we get a notice from the IRS, for example. We want to make sure that we reduce that stress as much as possible and resolve taxpayer issues, if they arise. A couple of examples of places where we're really, really laser focused. So first things first, the call center. We are doing everything we can to make sure that when you call us, you can reach us. And there's a lot to that. There is, of course, making sure that we have enough customer service representatives to pick up the phones. There's also a lot of underlying technology modernization efforts that are going on so that, we have a modern call center that can meet the demands of our taxpayers today. We're also super laser focused on online services. So individual online account, tax pro online account, business online account. These are three online services that the IRS has where taxpayers can go online and do a lot of the things that they need to do in a self-service way. You don't have to call us. And, I think in this day and age, a lot of taxpayers actually, prefer the convenience of being able to do it on your own online without having to ever pick up the phone. So that's another big area of focus for us. Another, big area that I'm quite excited about too, because not everything is so techy, I would say. So one area that we're very excited about that was a big focus of the last year is on simplifying notices. So the way that the IRS communicates with taxpayers, after tax filing, is through good old snail mail in most cases. The IRS sends out about 200 million notices to taxpayers, individuals and businesses every year. And that's oftentimes the start of, potentially interactions, a series of interactions that you might have to have with the IRS. So an area of focus for us has been, what can we do to make sure that the notice that taxpayers receive in the mail is as simple, kind of action oriented, short, as possible, so that taxpayers who receive it, can say, okay, I know exactly what the IRS wants from me. I know how to fix this situation quickly. So we're quite excited about that. There are, in terms of what we've done. So in the first year, we have focused on simplifying up to about 200 of the most commonly mailed notices that we send to individual taxpayers. And it's now October of 2024. We started this effort earlier this year, and we are well past the halfway point of redesigning those 200 notices. So we're very excited about that. One additional thing is that these notices we are going to put and make available in your individual online account. So if you misplace a notice, if you are moving or, not at your house, you can't access your mail, then we want to make it easy for taxpayers to be able to, see the notice digitally. I think that's a lot of what taxpayers expect in this day and age as well. So that is in the works, and we're excited about what taxpayers can expect by the end of this year, and we'll continue on the simplifying notices effort for the next couple of years as well.
All right, exciting stuff. Bridget, you were talking about some of the feedback that the IRS has gotten from participants in the direct file program, and that's been useful to kind of make sure it's gone successfully from pilot to permanent projects that the IRS will keep going and expanding on, offering into more states. Can you tell me a little bit more about the feedback that you guys have been getting, things that have been useful to improve the functioning of the direct file?
Yeah, so even before direct file launched, we were, as I said, putting pieces of direct file in front of taxpayers and getting their feedback on the types of questions we were asking, the language that we were using. And we got a lot of really great, specific suggestions from taxpayers on things that were confusing, so we could go back and simplify the language. Before you use direct file, we have what we call an eligibility screener that we have you walk through to help you identify if direct file is a good fit for you. The first draft of the eligibility screener last year we put in front of taxpayers, and they did not like it. I think everyone sort of hated the approach that we were taking, which was great. I'd rather find that out before we launched it, so our team could go back to the drawing board and really take a look at what we were doing and simplify the whole screener process, and then put that new version in front of taxpayers, and they liked that version a lot more. Throughout filing season, we were hearing from taxpayers, this language is confusing to me. I'm not sure what you're asking. And we were able to, during the filing season, make changes to the language within direct file itself. One of the big things that we saw where taxpayers were struggling to put in last year's AGI, they're using direct file for the first time. They've, not able to pull it in from last year's return because they haven't filed with direct file before because it wasn't an option. So we heard from taxpayers, through customer support and just through what we were seeing with direct file, that was a challenge for taxpayers. So the team went back and looked at what can we do to simplify this process for taxpayers and make it easier for them. And what we were able to do was give taxpayers the ability to import that information from their individual online account, like when we talked about, into direct file, so they didn't have to go back and find that number from their tax return last year, and really simplify the process for them to sign and submit the return and eliminate that barrier for them. We heard a lot from taxpayers in terms of, I want to see direct file available in more states. I want to see you add additional types of credits and income. And that's really what we've been working on for the upcoming filing season, to sort of respond to that taxpayer interest in, bringing direct file to more states and more individuals.
That's great to hear. We'll have plenty more to discuss, but we're going to take a quick break here. My guests today are Fumi Tamaki, the Chief Taxpayer Experience Officer for the Internal Revenue Service, and Bridget Roberts, the Direct File Chief at the IRS. I'm your moderator, Jory Heckman, on excellent, equitable, and secure customer experience, a closer look at high-impact service providers, sponsored by Carasoft on Federal News Network. Welcome back to Excellent, Equitable, and Secure Customer Experience, a closer look at high-impact service providers, sponsored by Carasoft on Federal News Network. My guests today are Fumi Tamaki, the Chief Taxpayer Experience Officer for the Internal Revenue Service, and Bridget Roberts, the Direct File Chief at the IRS. I'm your moderator, Jory Heckman. And Fumi, picking back up where we left off, I think another key theme of what the IRS has been up to, and actually a lot of HISPs have been up to, is making sure that there's this link between the employee experience and the customer experience, in this case, taxpayer experience, that if employees feel motivated, if they feel that they have the tools to help customers out, that it's really definitely a win-win there. Hearing all that, what is the IRS doing to ensure that the employee experience and the taxpayer experience are both at a high state?
It's a great question. And here at the IRS and in the Taxpayer Experience Office, we often talk about employee experience and taxpayer experience being flip sides of the same coin. Because a lot of times behind every taxpayer experience where they experience some pain points, there is probably an employee also experiencing a pain point. So it's definitely a very, very important area of focus for us. And when we do our research on, what does the customer's taxpayer's journey look like for a particular on a particular situation, on a particular issue. What are the moments that matter for that taxpayer? What are some of the pain points that that taxpayer might be experiencing along that journey? We also do the deep dive to say, what does the employee's experience look like? It's often that mirror image. And what are some of the pain points that they're experiencing, perhaps with some of the tools that they have to use to help the taxpayer resolve a particular issue. So, I was talking about notices earlier. The notice software that the IRS was using prior to this year was quite old, and it was outdated. And unfortunately, we didn't have the funding to be able to afford the 2.0 version of that software. The Inflation Reduction Act has enabled us to purchase the new software so that we can more flexibly, more quickly, more efficiently, redesign notices and also make it available to taxpayers online. So those are, just it is something that we think about every single time we talk about taxpayer experience is what's the mirror image, flip side of the coin, employee experience like, so that we can address both. Because often if you address the employee pain point, then you're oftentimes addressing that taxpayer's pain point as well.
Right. And Bridget, going back to the direct file side of things, this seems to be just a really great case study in agencies kind of meeting customers where they are, that there's, obviously a growing expectation of what customer service means more broadly, that people kind of want to interact with, a company or an agency in, the manner in which they prefer, whether that's on the phone, whether that is online. And, for online, that's a growing portfolio for the IRS. That's what is being done here with direct file. Can you speak a little bit more to that, how direct file is kind of meeting taxpayers where they are and how they're meeting, these expectations of taxpayers?
Yeah, I mean, I think as we think about meeting taxpayers where they are, a big part of that is giving them options in the ways in which they want to interact with the IRS. Fumi's been talking about a lot of, opportunities that the IRS has been offering taxpayers to conduct business with the IRS online so that you don't have to call, you don't have to walk into a taxpayer assistance center. But those options are still there for taxpayers who prefer to speak to someone, who prefer to walk in and actually talk to someone. So the goal here really is to give people options. Different types of engagements with the IRS might require different levels of, whether you want to do that online or you want to talk to someone on the phone. And so direct file really fits into that, and everyone has to meet their tax obligations. And we want to give them options in how they can do that. And direct file is one way in which taxpayers can file for free directly with the IRS online. But again, it's just one option in a suite of options. Taxpayers have the Free File program that has been a partner of the IRS for a long time and does an amazing job of providing services to taxpayers and free filing options. The VITA program and TCE, countless volunteers every year preparing tax returns for, eligible taxpayers, using a software or commercial provider, going to a paid preparer. Again, those are all options for taxpayers. What we had heard was that one of the options that didn't exist was this ability to file online directly with the IRS without having to go through someone else. And so direct file just sort of fills that, void, meets that need. And again, just creates an additional option in the larger sort of suite of options that help taxpayers decide what is the best choice for them when filing their tax return.
Right. And Fumi, going back to this idea of the IRS's digitization push, this seems like another thing that seems like a win-win, that by moving to, a digital first agency, it gets rid of kind of this deluge of paper that not too long ago the IRS was dealing with. Peak pandemic, the cafeterias being full of paper documents and the backlogs there. Definitely a unique case, but I think the point still holds that, this is something that can help the IRS more efficiently get through its incoming workload, and that it can also mean faster responses to taxpayers. And that it also, again, goes back to meeting taxpayers where they are, that they can, if they want to, respond to the IRS online and not have to snail mail correspondence back.
That's right. I think we, often talk about digital first, but not digital only, right? We're still going to have call centers. We're still going to have our walk-in clinics. You'll still be able to talk to a human if you would like to talk to a human. But I think a lot of times that's not what people expect. It's not what people expect in their interactions with other service providers that they have in their life. And, there is a certain level of convenience for taxpayers if they don't have to drive to a place to talk to somebody from the IRS, or if they don't have to pick up the phone. It's also cheaper, right? It is much cheaper for us to be able to service a taxpayer in a digital manner than in person or on the phone. And we have to make sure that we are spending responsibly, the taxpayer dollars that we get to run our agency as well. And so I think it's the fiscally responsible thing to do to make sure that we have effective, both cost effective and effective in terms of addressing the taxpayer's need, being able to provide services that is a win-win for both taxpayers and for our agency and tax dollars.
Yeah. And Bridget, can you speak to some of the state level partnership that the IRS has done with direct file? Because, certainly some taxpayers, in addition to the federal tax return, are also filing that state level tax return. And there has been some partnership there. Can you go into a little bit more detail of how that's been working out?
Yeah, so one of the challenges that we identified in the report to Congress with delivering something like direct file was creating that linkage between a federal and state return, because most taxpayers live in a state where they have a state filing obligation, and they don't want to use, one tool for their federal return and then have to go find something else for their state return and sort of start all over inputting their data again. So we knew that it was critical that we figured out a way for taxpayers to be able to file both their federal and state return in a seamless way. And during the pilot, we were incredibly grateful that we had a number of states who volunteered to sort of go on that journey with us and see if we could create that seamless experience for taxpayers. What we saw during the pilot was that we were successful in doing that. So, taxpayers file their federal return with direct file, and then if they live in a state where they have a state filing obligation, once they've filed that return, they have the ability to click a link and go to their state filing tool. And in most cases, they can import that information from direct file and bring it with them into the state tool. So it can provide most of the information that the state needs for filing a state return. So they can bring that information with them, answer a few additional state specific questions, and then file their state return. So they're not having to take that information to a different tool and start over and re-enter it. They can just seamlessly move from direct file and filing that federal return to the state return. And so a lot of the pilot was learning about whether we were able to build that seamless experience, that integration between a federal tool and a state tool, and whether taxpayers responded to that and what that experience looked like for the state. And what we saw were taxpayers really enjoyed that experience. It worked really well for the states. The partnership was great. They saw very few, customer service questions because it was so seamless and worked so well. And so we're excited to be able to now, bring that to 24 states this year and, give taxpayers that ability to file both federal and state returns sort of at one shot, moving from direct file into a state tool and bringing that information with them to help, ease the process of filing their state return.
All right. And Fumi, looking forward to the coming years, we've gone into a lot of detail what the IRS has already been able to do under the Inflation Reduction Act, but there is still a long road ahead with that strategic operating plan that you mentioned earlier. What's in store for the IRS in the coming years? What are the next couple of goals, short term, that you guys are looking to achieve under this mission of delivering better taxpayer experience?
For sure. I think our focus is definitely going to be on further enhancing the digital ways in which taxpayers can interact with the IRS. Of course, direct file being one of them, but other ways too. So, for example, I've been talking a lot about the simple notice effort during this interview, and I think the natural next step to putting a notice online so that the taxpayer can see it is then the ability for the taxpayer to reply to that notice seamlessly, easily, quickly, conveniently online. So that's something that we are looking at as the next step. Very, very excited about that. And then, just continuing to expand all of the different ways in which we can provide convenient self-service channels for taxpayers to be able to, do business with the IRS.
All right, fantastic. Well, thanks again to today's guests, Fumi Tamaki, the Chief Taxpayer Experience Officer for the Internal Revenue Service, and Bridget Roberts, the Direct File Chief at the IRS. I'm your moderator, Jory Heckman, and you're listening to Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search HISP. That's HISP.